Hey guys, welcome back to Inbox Academy. Today we have a very special guest. This is my friend Kristin MACINTYRE. She is a copy and voice strategist, and she's going to be taking us into a little bit of an AI discussion today. I'm really excited. So let me start us off with Kristin. How do you describe yourself and what you do?
Yeah, you nailed it. First of all, thanks so much for having me. I'm always so excited to chat with you, and I'm even more excited to talk shop about kind of AI in business and how this affects us as freelancers and copywriters and strategists, and what it might mean for us going forward. But yeah, I consider myself and call myself a copy and messaging strategist. I started off in the world of launch copy, helping lots of course creators and digital product entrepreneurs sell their courses and programs, and have recently pivoted into sort of the brand messaging space, which I also find really fascinating. So I do a little bit of copywriting and sales work and a little bit of brand messaging work. And yeah, all just to help my clients kind of find messaging that really feels like them. I know a lot of your audience is copywriters, and I'm sure we can all relate to encountering clients in the wild who are kind of afraid to sound really salesy or can't find messaging that really feels good to them. And it just constantly feels like they're selling, selling, selling. And I love to kind of step that back with my clients and say, no, 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 let's find some messaging that feels really true to your brand and your product and who you are. So yeah, that's what I'm up to nowadays.
Yeah, I love that so much. And you have been diving into how to use AI in that realm because it is true. It's already hard to kind of find your own voice and your own messaging strategy, I think. And then to layer on top of that, now we have this tool that can just kind of spit out writing. And I think it can be even easier to just like completely lose your voice, right? And all of your messaging and everything, and it just turns into this, right? I think I've heard you call it like the microwave of like it just kind of becomes this pool of the same stuff
Right.
baking over and over. So I feel like especially like your newsletter and your writing and stuff, it has so much personality to it. So I would love to hear from you. I know you use AI in your business. How does that work? How do you get a lot of personality through while still using AI?
Yes. Okay. There was so much packed into what you just threw my way, so I'm going to parse it out as
Yes.
best I can, and we can go back and forth and make sure I didn't miss anything. So to start off with, you made a really great point that AI is really great at producing writing, right? It is a full, like produce machine. Um which is interesting when your primary job is writing, right? Because we, as copywriters and marketers, used to do a lot of producing. Now, I know that the goal is always not to position yourself as a doer. However, rolled up in a lot of copywriting work is producing writing. Yes, you want to be the brains behind it. Yes, you want to fold in strategy and use your knowledge to connect with an audience and all that juicy stuff. Of course, of course. That's always been true. But a lot of what we deliver, our deliverables, are actually words, right? It is writing. So when AI came on the scene a few years ago and it was able to kind of do the writing bits, a lot of us were a little bit confused about what our role actually is anymore in marketing and
Mhm.
selling, in our client interactions, in our own businesses. So AI was an interesting wrench thrown, or like spanner thrown in the work, so to speak, of what marketers do. And this is not just true for marketing, but true for so many industries. We're going to talk specifically about copywriting, but um yeah, kind of threw this little wrench in the tires, so to speak. And so, well, I think a lot of copywriters had sort of an identity crisis of, well, if AI can do the writing, what do I do? What is
Yes.
my role? Do I have a business? Should I change my business? Should I change my offering? Should I change how I'm talking about myself? All these things. And when I was thinking through how AI fit into my business and my offerings, I really sat down and started to say to myself, well, and this goes back to another point you made, AI can absolutely produce writing. I mean, in a second, in a blink of an eye, right? It can give you a whole sheet of what you would have
It's,
previously spent hours or days doing.
yeah.
What it what it doesn't do immediately is create writing or produce writing that is true to your client, right? It often gives you writing that feels generic or like it could be said by anybody or just something that's non-specialized and non-personalized.
And sometimes just make stuff up anyway.
And sometimes totally false. Exactly. So, while it's very impressive, it's also very imperfect. And so when I was thinking through how AI might fit into my business as AI becomes just an obvious mainstay of marketing, um, I remembered that clients often really do struggle to find their voice in the first place. When you layer
Mhm.
AI and automation on top of that, they really get lost in the sauce because everything that AI produces doesn't sound like them. It sounds like a marketing textbook. It sounds like a robot set on autopilot. It's kind of like when if you've ever played The Sims, it's like when you create a sim, but it has no personality traits really. It's just a blank canvas. And that's
Yeah.
what happens when you just use ChatGPT right out of the box and you don't take time to sort of, and we'll talk about this next, but personalize it or spend time figuring out who you are first so that you can use AI in a way that's really productive for yourself. And I'm talking about me as a copywriter for my own business, and I'm also talking about helping my clients do that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you don't guide them at all, the Sims will just watch TV all day.
Exactly. You're like, wait, I wanted you to be a marathon runner. What are you doing? Yeah, exactly.
You're supposed to have a career. Like, yeah. Just run off and do whatever it wants.
Right.
I love that. No, I love that analogy. And yeah, I think it is. It's just so easy to fall into like, oh, can you just produce this for me and produce this for me and produce, and then you just end up like with this runaway train in a voice that is not your creation. And it is. It's really weird. I've had that experience of kind of letting it just, oh, can you produce this, this, and this for me? And down the road, you kind of feel like you read something, you're like, that doesn't even did I even instruct you to create that? Like, it doesn't even sound at all like something I would write. And yeah, it's just interesting. So how do you kind of start guiding it in that way? What is the beginning of that process? I know it's a very complex process with many steps, but
Yeah. So what I can say is you mentioned before that sometimes people treat AI because it's so good at producing and production. They treat it as sort of a microwave, right? A creativity microwave, a copy microwave, a marketing microwave, and we really, because its draw is convenience. We treat it like other convenience products, like a microwave, where we just push a button and we get what we want, right? A shortcut, so to speak. And while there are very obvious benefits to using AI as like a shortcut taker, that's also a real great way to get what we were just talking about, generic outputs that really don't reflect who you are or could, which I actually think is sort of the worst outcome, could actually be said by anybody for anybody in your industry. It's just kind of stripped of who you are. Now, we know as good marketers that usually, especially when we're marketing for businesses online, who that business and brand is actually a humongous piece of the puzzle, right? It almost is equal to, if not in some ways more important than the actual product or service somebody is selling. It's like, well, who is the brand? What is their positioning? What makes them
yeah.
different than somebody else? And when that stuff is kind of washed away and AI can just produce something that can belong to anybody selling, pillows or copywriting or digital products. There's no longer anything unique about it. So the question is then, how do we stop using it as a microwave? What are the other ways to use it? Like what
Mhm.
do we do with it if we don't just treat it like a button we push and get outputs? And one of the ways to look at AI, and to customize that sim, so to speak, to call back to that kind of analogy, is to start to figure out who you are, which is actually quite a deeply personal process for a brand or a business owner, so that you can
Mhm.
then teach AI or tell AI who you are, what makes you different, what you sound like, who you want to connect with. Now, these are kind of basic principles of business ownership, but you and I, and probably all of your listeners, know that a lot of businesses actually skip this part, or they think it's self explanatory. Oh, I'm, a plumber. I fix pipes. That's what I do. Okay, next, moving on. Like all of my clients are clients in my Fort Collins area. Moving on. But we really want to prevent ourselves from doing stuff like that and just being like, whatever, I'm a copywriter. It's self explanatory what I do. Press pause, back up, and figure out all of the nitty gritty, really personal things about your business or your client's business or what they believe in or who their brand is and what the brand sounds like and what they don't stand for. All of these kind of little quirks, so to speak, and personality traits that belong to the brand, not because they're fancy nice to haves, but because in a world where everybody starting to sound the same, it is more important than ever that you are different in some way. So the first part of using AI in a real productive way that can be kind of amazing in a business is to figure out who you are. Um, then you
Mhm.
can bring all of that juicy information to to whatever AI you're using to help you co-collaborate on your writing. Now, one other thing I'd love to say is that that's half of the puzzle, figuring out who you are and who the business is. The other half of the puzzle is actually learning how AI works. Because when we just open up a blank screen in ChatGPT or start out in Claude with like a new conversation button, we're actually not doing ourselves any favors, right? AI has certain memory limitations, certain memory functions. It has kind of projects or folders you can work within. It has the ability to upload information. In some instances, it remembers that information. In other instances, it won't reference that information. So, taking a little bit of time to figure out just how exactly the platform works will also help you in spades because you'll know how to use the software rather than just kind of opening up a blank screen and starting from scratch every time.
Yes, yeah. And you actually are the one that taught me a lot of that stuff, so very appreciated. Yeah, so I want to dive in now, shifting gears a little bit to email and how this relates to the email world, because obviously that's what we're all about here at Inbox Academy. How do you see AI kind of being used in the email marketing landscape, and how have you used it in your own email marketing?
For sure. Yes. So I think email freelancers and copywriters in particular really want to start to differentiate themselves from folks who are just kind of hired to write an email sequence or produce 6 emails or write a newsletter a week, right? Those are very production based offers and very production based work that, let's be honest, AI can absolutely produce emails, right? It can produce any type of writing. So, what we want to kind of think about in the email space in particular is if you are passionate about email marketing, I think this is such a great time to really get clear on the strategic inner workings of email marketing in addition to being really great at copy so you can know what works, but that's not enough anymore. I love email. I mean you will be well beyond me in email marketing, kind of like how it works, but I love it so much that it's always been kind of a natural piece of copy and a natural piece of marketing that I've been consistently drawn to. But to realize that there is so much that goes on the back end of email writing. It is absolutely not just writing an email and knowing that it has a subject line and a personalization tag and a PS, right? That's it, we're well beyond that. So for email in particular, I think getting to know how email works is going to be really important. It's already really important, but absolutely going forward. And if you're kind of like, well, I thought email marketing was just kind of writing emails, there's so much more to that. And actually, maybe Audrey, you can speak to some of that. Like there's so much behind the scenes that's not only super interesting, extremely important to businesses, and now where your brain is really going to be doing a lot of the strategic value. Whereas before, maybe you were like, okay, cool, I'll provide 3 different subject lines for this person. Now you really want to be thinking about what the utility of certain sequences are, where they might appear, what segments they might be important to. And I'll kind of pass it to you for a second, Audrey. I'm sure you can speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's definitely what we're all about here is getting deep into the strategy piece behind email. Yeah, who are you writing to? How can you segment that audience even more? How can you make it really, really personal? And I think that's the piece that AI is like really missing. I mean, it's kind of what you said before that of course it can write an email, but does it have any personality to it, right? Does it actually fit with your brand? Does it feel like a human speaking to another human? And I think that's, I think you can get AI to help you with that, but you have to be really consciously guiding it along the way. And like you said, know your own personality, your own voice, or that of your client, if you're working for a client, to be able to have it help you in an actually productive way. And even then, sometimes, I mean, I use AI a lot in my business, and even with some guiding, to be able to see that it sometimes is going to spit something out that I say, absolutely not. Where this is going a completely different direction. That is just wrong. I don't like that. But you have to have the strategy of knowing what you want it to produce to be able to even recognize like what's good, what's bad, where are we going with this? How do I want this to, because it's like it will follow your instructions, but it can still take those instructions in so many different ways if you're not very careful about how you provide to it.
Right. And I think this kind of is getting us into a deeper conversation about expertise, which is really important. We hear all the time, especially with these constant updates that AI goes through, that it keeps getting smarter and better and more strategic and more, now it's like at a PhD level, whereas before, 2 updates ago, it was at a high school level and all that. I think the CEO of OpenAI just said that yesterday about the latest model. So you kind of say to yourself, well, it is an expert, isn't it? So does that mean that I don't have to be an expert because AI is all knowing, right? It is a strategist. It is whatever you want it to be. And I think that that is, at least at this point in time, a bit of a trap to kind of get yourself into, right? Where you're like, well, I don't need to know all of the ins and outs. I can just ask AI to do the strategy work for me. And we're just not there yet. We're not there yet. Like, you can, and maybe this is a bit nuanced, but you can ask AI to help you figure out, it can help you figure out strategy. It can help you brainstorm strategy. It can give you different options to go with. It can help you map maybe the emotional arc of an email sequence, but it's not going to do that all inherently. You still have to know what you want from it. It you can't really assess the quality of what it gives you unless you're an expert in your field, right? So if you have domain experience, if you are an email marketing strategist, if you know exactly, what works in the email marketing landscape, and you bring that with you to your AI collaboration, what you can produce is actually probably quite amazing. If you don't have any idea what email marketing strategy entails and you ask it to do that work for you and you don't know if it's right or wrong, or it sounds good to you and you're like, all right, I guess that's good. That's where you get into trouble, because it's not, it can't do the work, it can't do the thinking work for you yet. It can do thinking work with you, strategy work with you, but it still needs somebody to kind of extrapolate the good stuff and discard kind of the bad stuff or the stuff you don't want to go with.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll give just like a really simple but tangible example on this that I've like run into myself. If you can write an email and then you ask AI, "Hey, can you provide a subject line for this email?" And it'll give you 10 ideas for subject lines. And they'll all be written as if you were just like heading a document. Like not even a copywriter headline style, just like what is the topic of the email? And it will just spit that out as your subject line. And anybody who's spent a lot of time in email knows you want something, with a certain angle to it. And one of the most common being like a curiosity driven, right? Subject line, something that's going to pique the curiosity and get them to open it, that doesn't just tell them what's inside. And that's just one angle you could take. But if you ask AI specifically, can you come up with some, subject lines that will drive curiosity and increase open rates, then it's going to actually help you produce some different angles that do have a curiosity element to them instead of just that, like, this is what the subject of the email is.
Right.
And I think that's, just knowing how to come out that. And also, I think another important thing to note there is that AI is very, I'm trying to think of the word, but that it kind of naturally tells you that everything's good.
Oh, it
And
aims to please. It will always tell you your ideas are brilliant.
yes, and so yeah, if ask it, "Oh, is this okay?" Like it's usually going to reinforce that for you, even if it's not. And so that's just an important thing I think to watch out for is that it can be very kind of like self-reinforcing of whatever you are putting into it.
Right. Yes. And we haven't even touched on any of this yet, but I think we tend to, because it's such an interesting, fascinating, kind of mind-blowing technology, we really tend to kind of like bow down at the AI altar and just be like, "Oh my God, this is magic. This is amazing," because it actually is totally crazy amazing. And also, that does not mean that it is accurate, free of bias, like the best thing just because AI wrote it. Like there's so much wrapped up in there that we still have to bring our own human judgment to and our own human expertise to and our own kind of, creative strategy to. So that those pieces for now anyway are still really important to producing good work in the email space and really in I mean any space. Yeah.
Yes, I love that so much. So, to kind of wrap things up, I would love to hear what are some things you think that people should be wary of or kind of look out for when they're using AI?
Yes. I actually love this question because there are a few things. And I think as we get kind of further and further into the age of AI, like let's not forget, AI is still a baby, right? It's barely
It's
2 years
crazy.
old. And so we're still really trying to figure out how to work with AI and what living in a world with AI means, what the implications are. I think that's some things we want to be wary of or just look out for. We touched on some already, but to go in just a little bit deeper, the generic output kind of effect that is taking place, especially in the digital marketing space, I think we're going to feel that even more acutely going forward. It's already starting to bubble up in kind of the conversations out there in the ether of like, if I see another AI generated post, I'm going to scream and all that. What is going to happen, I think, has already started happening, which is that because AI is so convenient, everybody will start to kind of flood the space with more content, more and more importantly, more generic content. That's kind of the thing that I think everybody's going to get a bit tired of, and I do think eventually the trade-off of like, cool, I wrote, 6 months worth of social posts in 2 hours or an hour. The trade-off of the speed is going to have a little bit of a backlash with folks being like, well, honestly, I'm not engaging with this because I know that it wasn't written by you. So I do think that one thing for us to look forward or to look out for going forward is that standing out is going to be more important than ever. And the the speed trap we also want to kind of watch out for, which is like, okay, just because you can pump out all of that content or all of those emails or all of this stuff doesn't really mean that you should, or that it can even work in your benefit if it's not done well or it's not done right. And this leads me to kind of one other thing that we want to probably be wary of going forward, and this is more of just um, a, a general comment on the AI space. What AI is doing, I think, which is interesting and probably harmful in the long run, is it's becoming an excuse for people to really outsource their own thinking to a robot. And I do think that that might have some real long-term implications. So again, with anything that is convenient, please, we are such convenient driven human beings, and I am talking about myself. Like, if it can be more convenient, I'm going to take that route. That's partially how we're wired as human beings, to conserve energy, to reserve caloric output, to take the kind of easier way rather than the harder way. So all like technology or services or products that make our lives easier are just kind of such no-brainers for us to reach toward. And I think AI is going to prove to be kind of a formidable opponent in the convenience space because it is so convenient to for your brain to say, you know what? I don't know that I'm going to spend time thinking about that myself. Let me use AI to do the thinking for me. And then what I'll do is I'll make the decision of what we'll go with. And again, that can be really great for producing things quickly, for going deeper on things, for conserving your own mental space, for kind of other things you want to pay attention to. And it's a double-edged sword because as we get more and more used to not doing the thinking ourselves, I think that can have some really far and wide and deep implications that we might not even be thinking about yet. So that might be
Yeah.
something to be wary of as well. Um,
Yeah, I've seen some studies coming out about how it's changing our thought patterns and how our brain works, and it's kind of crazy.
yeah, it's a wild new technology. And I don't think we've certainly haven't seen the peak of it. And so we certainly don't even know the implications yet. Um, and just like anything else, I think it will be used for tremendous good. Um, and also just have some tremendous far-reaching effects that we can't even quite predict yet. So those are some things to be wary of. If as a business owner, you can keep those things in mind as you're using AI, then you can use it in your business more responsibly, and you can also use it to help your clients more responsibly. So those are kind of the things I would dog ear just to keep in mind as you're folding AI into your work process.
Yeah, I love that so much. So, thank you, Kristen, for coming on and sharing your expertise with our audience. They're gonna love this video, I think. And to wrap things up, I'd really like to hear what are you working on now and how can people find you?
Yes. Okay. So folks can find me through my website, MACINTYREcopy.com. What I'm working on right now, what I'm most interested in is two things. I have one newsletter called The Fizz that I truly love, just a way to chat with folks in my orbit, business lessons.
And it is such a good newsletter. You guys all need to go sign up. I live for that one. Every time it jumps into my inbox, I drop everything else and read it. So,
Thanks, Audrey. Yes, I love the Fizz and I love the community of the newsletter. So that's been really fun. I've taken a little hiatus over the summer, but I'm very much looking forward to jumping right back into that. And I also have a new program that I piloted this year called Mini Me, where I take business owners, really online entrepreneurs, through a lot of what we talked about today. So, how to find your own business personality, how to find your brand personality. A lot of people don't think they have a brand personality, and I was one of those people, especially if you don't have like a really big obvious personality, if you're more of an introvert or you don't have really loud colors in your brand, you might say to yourself, I'm not really quite sure who my brand is, or what role my own personality as a business owner plays in my business. So inside Mini Me, I take folks through really two processes. The first is figuring out who they are as a brand and business, so you can really get clear on your messaging, on what sets you apart, on how you show up, on what your voice is. That's for, of course, copywriters or any business owner. And then the second part of Mini Me is training your AI, whether you use ChatGPT or Claude, to write like you, to sound like you, to think like you, with all those details you hammered out inside Mini Me. So that's a new endeavor for me. The first round was so much fun, and I will be opening for a second round before the year is done. So those are top of mind for me.
Yeah, and you guys, I took Mini-Me and it's fantastic. Really good stuff. Really helped me with how I use AI in my business. So highly recommend as well. Well, thank you so much, Kristen. And yeah, we'll chat with all of you guys later.
Talk soon.